Good morning, spiritual companions. We are reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, continuing the introduction on page 17, the first vision of Kali. And indeed, he soon discovered what a strange goddess he had chosen to serve. He became gradually enmeshed in the web of her all-pervading presence. To the ignorant, she is, to be sure, the image of destruction. But he found in her the benign, all-loving mother. Her neck is encircled with a garland of heads, and her waist with a girdle of human arms, and two of her hands hold weapons of death, and her eyes dart a glance of fire. But, strangely enough, Ramakrishna felt in her breath the soothing touch of tender love and saw in her the seed of immortality. She stands on the bosom of her consort, Shiva. It is because she is the Shakti, the power, inseparable from the Absolute. She is surrounded by jackals and other unholy creatures, the denizens of the cremation ground. But is not the ultimate reality above holiness and unholiness? She appears to be reeling under the spell of wine. But who would create this inscrutable, mad world unless under the influence of a divine drunkenness? Is not disorder the very foundation of our seemingly ordered universe? The cosmos has evolved out of the primeval chaos. Kali is the highest symbol of all the forces of nature, the synthesis of their antinomies, the ultimate divine in the form of woman. She now became to Sri Ramakrishna the only reality, and the world became an unsubstantial shadow. Into her worship he poured his soul. Before him she stood as the transparent portal to the shrine of the ineffable Brahman. The worship in the temple intensified Sri Ramakrishna's yearning, living vision of the Mother of the Universe. He began to spend in meditation the time not actually employed in the temple service, and for this purpose he selected an extremely solitary place. A deep jungle thick with underbrush and prickly plants lay to the north of the temples. Used at one time as a burial ground, it was shunned by people even during the daytime for fear of evil spirits. There, Sri Ramakrishna began to spend the whole night in meditation, returning to his room only in the morning with eyes swollen as though from much weeping. While meditating, he would lay aside his cloth and his Brahminical thread. Explaining this strange conduct, he once said to Hriday, "Don't you know that when one thinks of God, one should be freed from all ties? From our very birth, we have the 8 fetters of hatred, shame, lineage, pride of good conduct, fear, secretiveness, caste, and grief. The sacred threads reminds me that I am a Brahmin and therefore superior to all. When calling on the Mother, one has to set aside all such ideas." Hriday thought his uncle was becoming insane. As his love for God deepened, he began either to forget or to drop the formalities of worship. Sitting before the image, he would spend hours singing the devotional songs of great devotees of the Mother, like the Kamalat Kanta and Ram Prasad. Those rhapsodical songs describing the direct vision of God only intensified Sri Ramakrishna's longing. He felt the pangs of a child separated from its mother. Sometimes in agony he would rub his face against the ground and weep so bitterly that people, thinking he had lost his earthly mother, would sympathize with him in his grief. Sometimes, in moments of skepticism, he would cry, "Art thou real, mother, or is it all fiction, mere poetry without any reality? If thou dost exist, why do I not see thee? Is religion a mere fantasy, and art thou only a figment of man's imagination?" Sometimes he would sit on the prayer carpet for 2 hours like an inert object. He began to behave in an abnormal manner, most of the time unconscious of the world. He almost gave up food, and sleep left him altogether. But he did not have to wait very long. He has thus described his first vision of the mother. "I felt as if my heart were being squeezed like a wet towel. I was overpowered with a great restlessness and a fear that it might not be my lot to realize her in this life. I could not bear the separation from her any longer. Life seemed to be not worth living. Suddenly my glance fell on the sword that was kept in the mother's temple, and I determined to put an end to my life. I jumped up like a madman and seized it, when suddenly the Blessed Mother revealed herself. The buildings with their different parts, the temple, and everything else vanished from my sight, leaving no trace whatsoever. And in their stead I saw a limitless, infinite, effulgent ocean of bliss. As far as the eye could see, the shining billows were madly rushing at me from all sides with a terrific noise to swallow me up. I was panting for breath. I was caught in the rush and collapsed, unconscious. What was happening in the outside world I did not know, but within me there was a steady flow of undiluted bliss, altogether new, and I felt the presence of the Divine Mother. On his lips, when he regained consciousness of the world, was the word, Mother. God-intoxicated state. Yet this was only a foretaste of the intense experiences to come. The first glimpse of the Divine Mother made him more eager for her uninterrupted vision. He wanted to see her both in meditation and with eyes open. But the mother began to play a teasing game of hide and seek with him, intensifying both his joy and his suffering. Weeping bitterly during moments of separation from her, he would pass into a trance and then find her standing before him, smiling, talking, consoling him. During this period of spiritual practice, he had many uncommon experiences. When he sat to meditate, he would hear strange clicking sounds in the joints of his legs, as if someone were locking them up, one after the other, to keep him motionless. And at the conclusion of his meditation, he would again hear the same sounds, this time unlocking them and leaving him free to move about. He would see flashes like a swarm of fireflies floating before his eyes, or a sea of deep mist around him, with luminous waves of molten silver. Again, from a sea of translucent mist, the mother would appear to him. First her feet, then her waist, breast, face, and head, finally her whole person. He would feel her breath and hear her voice. Worshipping in the temple, sometimes he would become exalted. Sometimes he would remain motionless as stone. Sometimes he would almost collapse from excessive emotion. Many of his actions, being contrary to all tradition, seemed sacrilegious to people. He would take a flower and touch it to his own head, body, and feet, and then offer it to the goddess. Or, like a drunkard, he would reel to the throne of the mother, touch her chin by way of showing his affection for her, and sing, talk, joke, laugh, and dance. Or he would take a morsel of food from the plate and hold it to her mouth, begging her to eat it, and would not be satisfied until he was convinced that she had really eaten. After the mother had been put to sleep at night, from his own room, he would hear her ascending to the upper story of the temple with the light steps of a happy girl, her anklets jingling. Then he would discover her standing with flowing hair, her black form silhouetted against the sky of the night, looking at the Ganges or at the distant lights of Calcutta. Naturally, the temple officials took him for an insane person. His worldly well-wishers brought him to skilled physicians, but no medicine could cure his malady. Many a time he doubted his sanity himself, for he had been sailing across an uncharted sea with no earthly guide to direct him. His only haven of security was the Divine Mother herself. To her he would pray. I do not know what these things are. I am ignorant of mantras and the scriptures. Teach me, Mother, how to realize thee. Who else can help me? Art thou not my only refuge and guide? And the sustaining presence of the Mother never failed him in his distress or doubt. Even those who criticized his conduct were greatly impressed with his purity, guilelessness, truthfulness, self-control, and holiness. They felt an uplifting influence in his presence. It is said that samadhi or trance no more than opens the portal of the spiritual realm. Sri Ramakrishna felt an unquenchable desire to enjoy God in various ways. For his meditation, he built a place in the northern wooded section of the temple garden. With Hriday's help, he planted there 5 sacred trees. The spot, known as the Panchavati, became the scene of many of his visions. As his spiritual mood deepened, he more and more felt himself to be a child of the Divine Mother. He learned to surrender himself completely to her will and let her direct him. O Mother, he would constantly pray, I have taken refuge in thee. Teach me what to do and what to say. Thy will is paramount everywhere and is for the good of thy children. Merge my will in thy will and make me thy instrument. His visions became deeper and more intimate. He no longer had to meditate to behold the Divine Mother. Even while retaining consciousness of the outer world, he would see her as tangibly as the temples, the trees, the river, and the men around him. On a certain occasion, Mathur Babu stealthily entered the temple to watch the worship. He was profoundly moved by the young priest's devotion and fervor. He felt that Sri Ramakrishna had transformed the stone image into the living goddess. Sri Ramakrishna one day fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to Kali. This was too much for the manager of the temple garden, who considered himself responsible for the proper conduct of the worship. He reported Sri Ramakrishna's insane behavior to Mathur Babu. Sri Ramakrishna had described the incident thus: "The Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything. She showed me that everything was full of consciousness. The image was consciousness. The altar was consciousness. The water vessels were consciousness. The door sill was consciousness. The marble floor was consciousness. All was consciousness. I found everything inside the room soaked, as it were, in bliss, the bliss of God. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him also I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. That was why I fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother. I clearly perceived that all this was the Divine Mother, even the cat." The manager of the temple garden wrote to Mathur Babu, saying that I was feeding the cat with the offering intended for the Divine Mother. But Mathur Babu had the insight into my state of mind. He wrote back to the manager, "Let him do whatever he likes. You must not say anything to him." One of the painful ailments from which Sri Ramakrishna suffered at this time was a burning sensation in his body, and he was cured by a strange vision. During worship in the temple, following the scriptural injunctions, he would imagine the presence of sin in himself and also its destruction. One day he was meditating in the Panchavati when he saw come out of him a red-eyed man of black complexion, reeling like a drunkard. Soon there emerged from him another person of serene countenance, wearing the ochre cloth of a sannyasi and carrying in his hand a trident. The second person attacked the first and killed him with the trident. Thereafter, Sri Ramakrishna was free of his pain. About this time, he began to worship God by assuming the attitude of a servant toward his master. He imitated Hanuman, the monkey chieftain of the Ramayana, the ideal servant of Rama, and traditional model for this form of self-effacing devotion. His movements began to resemble those of a monkey. His eyes became restless. He lived on fruits and roots, with his cloth tied around his waist, a portion of it hanging in the form of a tail. He jumped from place to place instead of walking. After a short while, he was blessed with a vision of Sita, the divine consort of Rama, who entered his body and disappeared with the words, "I bequeath to you my smile." From then on, that smile was always on his face, even in samadhi. Mathur had faith in the sincerity of Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual zeal, but began now to doubt his sanity. He had watched him jumping about like a monkey. One day, when Rani Rasmani was listening to Sri Ramakrishna's singing in the temple, the young priest abruptly turned and slapped her. Apparently, listening to his song, she had actually been thinking of a lawsuit. She accepted the punishment as though the Divine Mother herself had imposed it. But Mathur was distressed. He begged Sri Ramakrishna to keep his feelings under control and to heed the conventions of society. God himself, he argued, followed laws. God never permitted, for instance, flowers of two colors to grow on the same stalk. The following day, Sri Ramakrishna presented Mathur Babu with two hibiscus flowers growing on the same stalk, one red and one white. Mathur and Rani Rasmani began to ascribe Sri Ramakrishna's mental ailment in part, at least, to his observance of rigid continence. Thinking that a natural life would relax the tension of his nerves, They engineered a plan with 2 women of ill fame. But as soon as the women entered his room, Sri Ramakrishna beheld in them the manifestation of the Divine Mother of the universe and went into samadhi, uttering her name. End of section. End of today's reading.